1874, the podcast with Dan Bardell and Gregg Evans.
Hello and welcome to 1874, the podcast, as you've just heard, with myself, Dan Bardell, and the Athletics' Gregg Evans. We're here to look back on another away day win for Aston Villa in the Premier League, talk about the transfer window and how we think the squad shapes up ahead of the new season. And there was another thing that we wanted to talk about as well, but I've completely forgotten what it is off the cuff. As you know, we don't make any notes really for this podcast. Gone are the days of Tom Julian and all his boring notes. This show is in association with NordVPN, and you're going to hear a little bit more about what they offer later on in the show. But they're very, very helpful. And also you can find out about them in the description. So click the link that's in the description. Right then, Greg. Leicester City 1, Aston Villa 2, Onana and Duran on the score sheet. A familiar feel from Villa's away games so far because it's the same two goal scorers as it was in the first away game in the win against West Ham. But this was a different win. This was not a good game of football. Neither team played particularly well. It was very, very bitty. Fouls every 5 seconds, yellow cards galore as well. But the main thing, as always, is you got to get the result when the game's like that, when you're not at your best. And Villa did that, Greg.
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Dan. How are you?
I didn't ask you how you are, did I?
After all that.
Good intro, though. Good intro. Except for forgetting
it
what
was
we're
a good
talking
intro. Nobody cares how I'm feeling, do they? Let's talk about Villa.
I think because
that's
already
what
had
everyone's here for.
We'd had a good chat before we came on, so I knew the kind of vibe of how you were feeling. So I didn't want to, I didn't want to go through it again, basically.
I wouldn't have gone through it, don't worry. I might have talked about my breakfast. I had a very old school breakfast today.
Go on in, I like stuff like that.
I went beans and cheese on toast today, which I haven't done for many years.
What made you get up and think I'm going to have beans and cheese on toast this morning?
Well, I went for an extended run this morning, so I thought I better get some carbs in with the old toast. And I usually have eggs for breakfast, so I just fancied a change today, so I went for that. But yeah,
how far did you run?
I did 7K. I usually do 5K every Sunday, but I just extended it a little bit today. So
is that why you pushed the podcast 15 minutes?
No, it's not. That was child care issues.
Okay. Good on you, 7K in the morning. That's
yeah. It's good. Gets you going, doesn't it? I'm always up early. So, but no, more serious stuff. Yesterday, very important for Villa. Good to just get the win and look. There's been times where Villa have gone to Leicester previously. I remember one horrible year under Tim Sherwood when they were 2-0 up and lost 3-2. And
a Dean Smith game. There was a 4-0, wasn't there? That wasn't great.
Oh God, that was a bad one. So yeah, to go there and get the win, that's the most important thing. And look, Villa's form towards the back end of last season, and at times the away form was the area that they were looking to improve this season. And the fact that they've won 2 out of 2 away games now is a really good start. So, yeah, good all-round result. Not the best performance, but I think plenty to build on. And look, as you say, the key was to just get the win ahead of the international break and give the players a little bit of time now to reevaluate and debrief the first 3 games of the season.
I love doing live because you can do things like this and get involved in the live chat.
Yeah,
Greg will be blasting around the golf course after that breakfast. Nigel Brooks. No doubt Greg will be on the golf course at some point today.
Thanks for that, Nigel Brooks. No, sadly, I won't, unfortunately. I mean, you do know me too well, but I have got a day with the family today. I have to do some family days. Can't play golf every day.
It's good of you, Greg. It's good of you to be a family man. And there we go, me trying to control things. We've got James Meakin as well. The early and free-flowing yellow cards changed the game yesterday, agreeing with what I said at the start. Before we get deeply into the game, I was thinking about this yesterday. Injuries are obviously starting to be a little bit of an issue already. We don't really know how long Leon Bailey's going to be out for. Philogene was absent this week as well. There's a clear problem in defence at the moment. Diego Carlos and Matty Cash missing. And people will talk about Villa's transfer window and say they didn't do enough. I think it's very, very important to say if the club could have done more in terms of if they were allowed with the UEFA regulations and the Premier League's PSR regulations, they would have done more, but they're stretched. So they can't, basically, is the word that's come out the club. If you think about the team that actually ended up playing yesterday, if you had everyone fit and picked that 11, I was trying to work out in my head the 11 if basically everyone was fit that wasn't the 11. I've explained that terribly, by the way. So you'd have either Gauchi or Olsen in goal. You'd have Cash or Nedeljkovic at right back. Diego Carlos and Mings centre back. Matson left back. You'd then have Kamara and Barkley in midfield. You'd have Ramsey on the left and Philogene on the right, and Buendia and Duran. So people going about depth. That's a pretty good second 11 compared to what played yesterday, I would say. So I know we would have liked one or two more, but people are making out like we're massively short. We've just got injuries at the moment, and you can't stockpile players for the sake of it. You can't have people come in who, when everyone's fit, aren't going to play or make you better, and they're going to sit on the bench, and then someone else is going to be kind of rotting outside of the 20 match day squad. We're not as short as people kind of like to make out. It's just there is injuries again at the moment. But like I say, you can't just stockpile players.
Yeah, I think I get the point you're trying to say. I'm not sure exactly what you were going on about with that 11 there, because didn't some of those players finish anyway yesterday?
They finished, but what I'm saying is you've got your 11 that played yesterday. Let's say Villa picked that 11 for a game when everyone was fit.
Oh, right.
The 11 that aren't playing, there is another 11 there.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's
Sorry.
not
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they're really short.
Yeah, I think I understood the line that you were going down. And yeah, I think, injuries are already becoming a tiny bit of a concern. The good thing is having the international break now gives the players a little bit of time to, so some of the players anyway that are not on international duty to rest and recover. The key this summer for Villa and, for Unai Emery was to try and build a squad that was very strong. And we've spoke about this on previous podcasts, haven't we? To not just have a real strong 12, 13 or 14, to try and get 19 or 20 players who they can rotate from time to time, because the Champions League was the other thing we were going to talk about that you didn't mention at the start. So the Champions League draw was one of the hot topics we wanted to get on to today. But leading into that, Villa are going to have really tough games, back to back. They're going to have Tuesday night games against Bayern Munich, and then not sure who they got immediately after, but they're going to be tough Premier League games. So you're going to be having 3 tough games in a week. Now, Emery looked at it over the summer and thought that he wanted sort of 18, 19 players who he could turn to. And if, say, Amadou and Onana drops out and they have to call on somebody else, they don't lose it. I was close. He wouldn't have been happy, would he?
Mate, I did it on Sky Sports News last week or the week before. I was
heartbroken.
Because I was so focused on not doing it. I did it. I corrected it immediately, but I went full and said Andre, and then went back and changed it. But even before I did it, I reacted quickly. But Dave Reed did it so quick that it looked like I hadn't rectified my mistake or wasn't going to rectify my mistake. So it looked like Dave Reed had picked me up and then I'd gone back. But I knew I'd done it and was going to do it quickly. But Dave Reed was so sharp, like he knew I was going to do it. Anyway, I've interrupted you. I'm really sorry.
No. We're not going down that. We'll get his name right all the time. The point I'm trying to make is if Onana or Tielemans come out of the team through injury or suspension, or and they need a little bit of a break, bringing Barkley in as a replacement or an alternative, Kamara when he's back fit, or however it might work, Villa won't lose anything. That was the aim. And look, it's going to take a bit of time before we know whether that'll be the case. The back end of last season, Villa were very, very stretched, and if that season had gone on, mate, if there was 2 or 3 more games perhaps in the season, Villa might have missed out on the Champions League because the form was really poor. And Emery and the rest of the coaching team and backroom team at Villa didn't want to go down that road again. They didn't want to have a period where they suffered really bad because of a lack of squad depth. So let's hope that first and foremost Villa don't get as many injuries as last season, because that was so taxing for them at the end. But if they do at some point, hopefully they'll have enough quality in reserve to come in and fill those gaps.
Yeah, a couple of really good comments in the live chat. First one from David Styles, who must have his post notifications on. He must listen to me at the end of every show and kind of keep the rhythm and keep himself subscribed with his post notifications on, because he's always here live. So thank you very much, David Styles. He says keeping harmony in the squad is key. Just having loads of players isn't the way forward. Rotation is how we'll keep the team fresh. I would agree with that. Villa are going to be able to do that more this season, but you can't have, even if there might be players that you want to get rid of, you can't have people who were kicking around or not doing anything on big wage. And I quite like that, even though Emery sometimes may, prefer to sign someone else and get rid of someone, if they stay, like he's done with Luca Dean, to be fair, and look at how well he's doing now. Emery will still coach them, still get the maximum out of them, and still manage to keep them happy. I think that's really important and really good management.
Yeah, and look, Emery's shown that it's not all about him. It's not all about the players that he's brought in, because he's moved on Alex Moreno, on loan to Nottingham Forest, and kept Luca Dean, who we thought at the time might be, going to lose his place when Moreno came in. So, Moreno was a guy who he knew, well from Spain. He'd obviously been impressed with what he's seen during his time as boss at Villarreal and perhaps in previous times. Villa gave him the option of bringing somebody in that window to, make him feel like at least he had some sort of input in the transfer window, because it was quite a quiet one for Villa, wasn't it? That window. But in 12 months, he's realised that actually Luca Dean's a better player than Alex Moreno, and he's got the best out of him. And was trying to report this all along when Moreno came in. It was not a case of that's bye-bye to Luca Dean. Yes, he's on big money, and at times Villa have looked at it and thought if they could move him on and take his wages off the bill, then that would suit them. But he's proving to be a very important player still, isn't he? As he showed again yesterday.
Yeah, great assist, which I'm sure we'll come on to at some point. Comment here of LJF Mac kind of disagreeing with what I'm saying. It's not about stockpiling; it's about improving the squad, like upgrading on Carlos, getting someone properly to compete with Cash, who is less susceptible to injury, properly replacing Diaby, etc. I see the point that's being made there, but if you can't get rid of someone, you basically, your hands are tied. And I think Villa have, at one point, Diego Carlos looked like he was quite close to go to Fulham. That hasn't materialised. There was links of going back to Spain as well. But basically, the way Villa are financially at the moment, they're not a Chelsea. They're not able to say, oh, well, we're getting a player the manager wants, and then we'll just have Diego Carlos in the bomb squad doing nothing. That isn't what Villa can do. So I just think I get what people are saying. I can understand the frustration a little bit, and Villa get a lot of business done so early that when it gets to the end of the transfer window every year, it feels like Villa aren't busy. And what are they doing? But they've always done more than everyone else. At the beginning of the transfer window, that's the way Villa operate. And I think that's a better way of operating, because players get pre-season. But Villa are kind of, the hands are forced. I'm sure they would have liked to have got rid of Carlos and got Gertruda in, but it's just, it couldn't happen.
No, and this is the issue. Look, a lot to talk on the back of that. Clubs who buy on deadline day and perhaps the day before, they're not panic buys, because they might have been after these players for a very long time. And we, if Gertruda had come to Villa, we wouldn't have been talking about a panic buy, because he's somebody that they'd tracked for a serious amount of time. But typically, the clubs that get their business done earlier, the better organised ones, they're the ones that have their plans in place, and they're already building for the next window. Villa are hamstrung a little bit by PSR, yeah. What we've got to remember also is that they're a club that, as big as they are now, and as big as Villa always has been as a club, they're still playing catch up with a lot of these other clubs in the Premier League, because it was only 6 years ago that they were in the Championship. So, revenues were much lower then, and it takes time to increase the revenue, year after year after year. And that's all, it's a long process of getting better sponsorship deals into the club, bringing better players in, moving them on for bigger money, building up the academy and moving players on for big money there. We've seen that a little bit in recent years with Aaron Ramsey going, with Philogene going but coming back. Chukwuemeka, Grealish was another one, but a slightly different scenario, because he's generational talent, so to speak. And yeah, Archer's a good example. Villa have slowly started to copy what the real big teams in the division have been doing for years, or have been trying to do, but they're always playing catch up. And it's only now where they're starting to get close to being level. In a similar way that Newcastle United are finding as well. They want to spend a lot of money but can't. There are flaws in the system, yes. Of course there are. Villa want to go and spend, but they can't because of the rules and regulations, which feels frustrating. They've got one of the best managers in the country, in the division. They've got, they've built up all the infrastructure around it, a huge fan base. This is a club that wants to kick on even further. When Nassif Sawiris and Wes Edens came in 2018, they said they want to get Villa towards the top of the Premier League, back into the Champions League, and then fighting for the Champions League and the Premier League. So that ambition has always been there. Unfortunately, they can't just do it as quickly as they hope. And the key is trying to build up the revenue now consistently every single year. But they've got to get it right with the signings. So often they can't afford to do. They're quite lucky with Diaby in some respects that Saudi Arabia had clubs that were willing to pay that amount of money to take him back. Now, Diaby was not a bad signing, I don't think.
No, not at all.
He played every single game last season, featured in every single game. Didn't quite hit the heights that we expected, but perhaps might have this season. Villa were lucky in that they bought him for a very big amount of money and were able to get the money back. They won't get that with every single player that they sign. So, the point with Carlos trying to get a better player than Carlos, well, they've got Ezri Konsa, they've got Pau Torres, they've got Tyrone Mings coming back. They're three very good defenders. Diego Carlos is a pretty good defender as well. So who do you go and buy as a fifth centre back that's better? It's a hell of a lot of money. For you're probably going to have to pay £40 million.
Yeah, well, that's what they tried to do, isn't it? They wanted Gertruda, but
who can play at right back, centre back, holding midfielder. He's a versatile player who can play in lots of different positions. So that would have made sense in many ways because he could have filled lots of different gaps. But if you're specifically signing somebody better than Carlos, I think that's going to be quite difficult.
Maybe someone a bit more durable, I think, is what people want. But the hands are tied, and I think.
But who do you have for a fourth choice centre back? You can't go and sign. Okay, Man City. Yeah, fair enough. They've got 4 or 5 fantastic centre backs.
They play them all at the same time quite a lot.
And look, maybe Villa can start playing 3, but I just think it's really difficult for Villa when they're quite tight, in terms of incomings and outgoings that they can then go and get a £40 million fourth choice centre back. It's not easy, is it? And it's going to take time. So unfortunately, as much as in a hurry as everybody at the club are in and the fan base, just have to accept sometimes it's slow. It's a slower process. Each transfer window trying to improve. Have Villa improved this season?
Yeah.
I think the squad is perhaps stronger. I think maybe the losing Diaby. Is Philogene better than Diaby? Not for me yet, but could be in the future. Is Ross Barkley or Onana combined better than Luiz? Probably. Having the two of them, I'd say, are better.
Because Barkley's essentially Dendoncker / Eurobenham now. So
yeah, and
that's better.
And it's better, isn't it? Eurobenham was a player that he's showing a lot of promise, but probably needs a couple of seasons in the Premier League to develop. As we've seen a little bit with Everton yesterday, there were some errors in his game, but I think Villa are in a better place. I really do. I think the losses of Luiz and Diaby are unfortunate and are going to hurt them in some ways, but I do think the squad in general is better. And I think you've got to remember some of the younger players in the team, or some of the some of the players with less experience in the Premier League have had all of last season. Torres is going to be way better this season, I think.
He's already been brilliant at the start.
That's what I mean.
And such a classy player.
For the year as well. The year that he's had, he's going to be better. Tielemans is great. Onana's coming in with plenty of experience already. Barkley's, we know what we're going to get. Duran's going to be playing more minutes. He's going to be more of an impact player. And look, maybe we'll get on to whether he should start at some point soon. Later into this podcast. But I do think Villa are going to be better equipped for the last few seasons.
I agree with you. So I think there also has to be a massive amount of trust in the people that are running the football department. I said at the start that I'm sure, well, in fact, I know that they wanted to be more active, but they can't be because of the 2 sets of rules. That's really killed them at the end of this window. Not as many outgoings, perhaps, as they would have liked to have given them the flexibility. But you have to remember what we were like when these people came in, what they've done in 18 months, in some cases less than 18 months. Now they're sat at a Champions League draw on Thursday night because of these people. So you have to trust those people, basically.
You do. You have to. And there's another
They've
side
got the
to
track
it, of
record.
course. They've got an amazing track record, so they deserve the right to be able to bring in the players that they want now. They've earned that. You know, Emery and his coaching team have earned that. If Emery goes to the owners and says, I want a player for £50 million or £60 million and the money's there, then he's earned the right to say, this is why I think I deserve him. We have to be very careful and say, as brilliant as Emery is as a coach, is he a great talent spotter in terms of bringing players in? You know, has he got the track record of signing very, very good players over the years? The Arsenal experience is a little bit flawed, but, you know, bought quite a few players in that didn't work. Nicolas Pepe will always be one that will hang over him. But then also you have to think it's very much two departments at Villa now. There's the business side, which Chris Heck will organise, you know, nothing really to do with player recruitment and that side of things. And then there's the football side, which is, you know, Emery at the head of it, Moncha, he's guy that will do all the bits behind the scenes, but Unai Emery's the head of it. Let's not get this wrong. He's the most important person at the football club behind the owners. So it's very much there's no real scrutiny. It's the manager deciding what he wants, the owners deciding whether they can get it. Villa haven't worked like that for a long time. They've always had a CEO type figure in there analysing whether it's right financially, whether it's right for the club to do that. So it'll be a head coach and his team saying, we want this player. That will then go to the CEO. The CEO will then go to the owners and say, the manager wants this, you know, a lot of money. We need to be careful because, you know, FFP and PSR or whatever, no real scrutiny at Villa now. It's a case of if Unai Emery wants something, the owners then decide.
You've also got to remember that Villa had a pretty mindless 12-month period in terms of recruitment, which was nothing to do with those people when Gerrard first came in and Christian Perslow. Christian Perslow did a lot of good for Villa. I'm not saying he didn't, but there was a mindless 12 months where Villa made some pretty bad financial transfer decisions in terms of, you know,
Coutinho's always
Coutinho, Danny Ings.
Yeah, I don't think Ings was a bad one.
Big way. I'm saying they got players for big wages, although they did get some money
Ings.
back on Ings, in fairness.
Yeah. No, Ings wasn't a bad deal. Ings was Villa's top goal scorer for, you know, he scored more goals than any other player, so that's pretty good. They paid £15 million, I think, back for him. They got 12 million back immediately and another 3 million when West Ham avoided relegation. So they got the money back from him. I don't think Ings was a bad deal. I think replacing Grealish was the three players that come in for Grealish was always the issue. Were Bailey, Ings, Buendia good enough? You know, for a long time they didn't really show it, did they?
No.
Didn't really play together for a long time as well, which was a bit of an issue. The Coutinho one was always a bad one. That was a case of the club wanting to give a new manager a player. Fair enough, but it went wrong. He was not the right player.
Which can happen.
And it can happen, yeah. And you've got to say, look, you know, if a new manager comes in, he's going to want a player, which, you know, same as Unai Emery. He desperately wanted Nico Williams before he, you know, burst onto the scene. Oh God, we've said it again. Burst onto
every
the
week. Greg.
We shouldn't have said it.
I mean, you say we. I didn't say it.
You said it last week. You said it last week.
Okay, fair enough. Not this way. When I said it, I didn't go, we shouldn't have said that. It was me. I did it. You can't say we.
We're a collective here. We're both to blame.
Fair enough. When something's bad with a team, then it appears.
Nico Williams was a player that, you know, Emery desperately wanted before they signed Diaby. You know, Diaby was the next option. It's amazing to think what Villa would have been like if they'd
won the league, Greg.
Yeah, but then also saying that, would Bailey not have had his great season as he did last year? You know, might not have played as often, might not have had as much of an impact, might have even left the club. So yeah.
Okay, we should probably talk about the game because that's what we came here to do. But we've gone quite detailed on.
We've got a bit transfers, haven't we?
Yeah, but before we do, the Sandman box, it says, Dan, is that an Oaks goalie top behind you? Top drawer that. Thank you for noticing. Do try and rotate the shirts when I remember on these podcasts, and it's a vintage, that, isn't it? Absolute vintage AST. Michael Oaks and AST. Mark Bosnich shirt behind me. Oh no, I can't get the. There we go. I've got it off the screen. I couldn't get it off the screen. Trying to do a bit of producing myself here that could lead to more content in the future. Just learning the ropes. I am. Right, great win, Greg. Win ugly. That's what Villa have done. There's quite a lot of interesting things to talk about from the game, despite the fact it wasn't the most free-flowing game of football. But we won't get into this. But I was just thinking, like, the last podcast, we're absolutely raving about Rodgers, and he's absolutely brilliant. God, he had a stink yesterday. He couldn't do anything right. Just couldn't do anything right. Morgan Rodgers yesterday. So really, really unfortunate, especially when the manager before said he's ready for the senior squad, and then he had an absolute nightmare yesterday. But I'm sure he'll come back. He's had very few bad games in the since he's joined the club. But God, he would give the ball away for fun yesterday. Morgan Rodgers did. Watkins is probably the first place we should start in terms of talking about him. Missed a couple of chances again, and obviously with Duran coming on, people are now going to say, should Duran be starting? Duran obviously scored the winner yesterday. I don't think it's even just ring rust with Ollie Watkins. I'm under the impression, Greg, that he's carrying a little bit of an injury at the moment. Do you think the same?
I'm not sure. I'd have to.
That's wild speculation on my behalf.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. So
he did have a hamstring injury when he came back from when he got back into training. I feel like he's struggling with something. He's not quite himself.
I mean, possibly. I mean, only he will know that. If he's struggling, if there is an issue, then we won't hear that because a lot of players have got issues a lot of the time. That's something that often supporters forget. They play with niggles and injuries, and if they're not, but sometimes it doesn't affect them. But no, I'm not sure, so I can't comment on that. But let's just take his performance in isolation. He worked hard. He showed he was sprinting around a lot. So if you've got hamstring issues, then you can't do those sprints because you're going to pull up at some point. He got into excellent positions again. I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but I'm going to stick by it because this is how I feel about Watkins. As soon as he scores, he's going to get lots of goals, and I'm not concerned that he hasn't. There's a stat that's now going around that he hasn't scored for 7 or 8 games, I think, in the Premier League. Forget that. You can't carry a season over because he scored for England in the World Cup, in the Euros. So I'm not having that stat. He hasn't scored for 3 games in a row in the Premier League. It's a new season, a fresh start, and he will get the goals. Should he lose his place now and should Duran come in? Still think it's ever so slightly too soon. I think if I was the manager, then I would give Watkins a couple more games. I think the way that Villa plays is very important. I think Watkins' influence is very important to the way that Villa play. I think they'd be different if Duran started. For now, Duran's very, very good to bring off the bench. But I think in a couple of games' time, 2 more games, if Watkins hasn't scored and Duran's still doing what he's doing, then he deserves a start because it is unfair to keep a striker on the bench like that who's scoring and performing.
I think in the first half, I thought Watkins' general play was actually really good. We pressed high and we won the ball high a couple of times, and Leicester were trying to play out from the back, and because of Watkins and Rodgers, they couldn't really do that. That's the aspect of the game which is really, really important. That Watkins is far superior to Duran.
You won't get it with Duran. You just won't get it.
You might one day, but at the moment you won't get that level of. Maybe when he starts, it's unfair to say. Maybe if he started a game, you would see that from Duran, but he's not as good. He's nowhere near as good at pressing as Ollie Watkins. And
he might never be.
Yeah, and a few opportunities came from that high press yesterday and under the day. We score. Watkins is a notoriously slow starter to a season. Generally, he started the season really slow last year as well. You're right. Once he scores one, he'll go on a run, and he won't be happy with the finishes yesterday. He won't be happy with the finishes against Arsenal either. But I have full confidence if he has an injury-free season, Ollie Watkins, he's going to get us 20+ goals because that's what he in all competitions. Because he's one of the best strikers in Europe right now. So no concerns there at all from my point of view. Definitely where there's zero concerns at Aston Villa Football Club, Greg, is set pieces. Because, again, Austin McPhee's come out with a new one from his playbook. He'd been working on that in the week. It was very clear. What impressed me most about that set piece was, look, I don't know the intricacies on how clubs work on set pieces in training. But Ramsey didn't start the game. So he was heavily involved in that set piece. I don't even know if Ramsey will have worked on that set piece or whether he's just told what to do. But yet again, it's just worked absolutely perfectly. Although Watkins got the assist for that goal. I don't know whether you saw. He must have got a nick on it before it went to Onana. But it's just a very, very innovative set piece. And it's a brilliant goal.
Yeah, it is, and it's not a new routine. It's something that Villa have tried before. If you look back to the Liverpool game last year, very early into the season, Villa tried it against Liverpool. It was different players doing exactly the same routine. It was Douglas Luiz, I think either Bailey or Diaby, and instead of crossing it, Bailey or Diaby shot and Alisson tipped it away. So it's a move that has been done before, but Villa have kept it away for a very long time to keep things fresh, and they've reintroduced it again now. So why it works so well with different players, it's a very good point that you brought up with Ramsey not starting the game, is because Villa created this amazing set piece culture, at the club. So when they're training with different players and new players are coming into the team, like Onana, who has become a real threat at set pieces, there's already a culture there. So the players know that the extra work that they do with Austin McPhee genuinely works on a match day. So they actually enjoy it. They really buy into it. And lots of different players can swap around in the positions and know the exact moves. So yeah, Liverpool, that would have been a year ago almost when they last played them. I think it was last September or last October, wasn't it? And exactly the same move, but it didn't quite come off because they didn't execute it well. Now, you can look at the Leicester defence yesterday and say that defensively they were all over the place, and they allowed Villa to do that. Well, yeah, but so did Liverpool, and Liverpool had more defenders in the back line when they were defending that set piece. So, and a Liverpool a bad defensive team? No, it's a fact that Villa are very, very creative from set pieces. They have lots of different options. The opposition team, no matter who they are, they don't know what Villa are going to do. So they don't know how to set up. I think it was, I think it was Torres who played quite an important role in the.
He did.
It was Torres. He was kind of blocking one or two of the players.
Kind of just occupied two players. They did the analysis on Match of the Day last night.
Okay.
Joe Hart was talking about what Pau Torres did.
It was Torres then. You're right. Yeah. So it was Torres, and he was blocking either one or two players, which allowed Ramsey and Watkins, I think, to run through. From there the move worked. Lovely touch from Ramsey. And perfectly executed. Well, not perfectly executed actually, because I don't think it was supposed to be Onana that put the finishing touch to it, but he showed a little bit of initiative and got there, ahead of the defence. So the move was great. Villa have got loads of different attacking options. They've already scored 2 from set pieces in 3 games. So it's good, and they've got Onana in there now who's absolutely massive. So he's going to score loads of goals as well, or at least be a threat. And so that's one area you just have not got to worry about with Villa. They're going to be one of the most attacking teams in the division from those set plays.
Great to have Ramsey back. He's such a good player. I think people forget how good he is. He was brilliant in the second half of that season under Emery. Scored so many important goals. The way he carries the ball and his touch is just absolutely brilliant. The way he can manipulate the ball and keep it so close to his feet when he runs is a really, really rare trait amongst footballers. He's just a wonderful footballer, and when he gets a run of games, he's going to go back to that Ramsey that we saw in the second half of Emery's first season.
Yeah, and massively buys into the set piece, culture as well. Always really vocal, getting the wall pushed back further when they're too close. Always telling the referee to look at it, look at the opposition, and that's a really big impact. But yeah, his running ability, the way he can drive with the ball is exceptional. Breathtaking pace, lovely touch. Clear eye for goal, and yeah, I'm really excited to see him get fully back, because I think he is now. I think we can almost say he's fully back, can't we?
Yeah, we didn't see every time he looked like he might start to get back to being Jacob Ramsey, he'd break down again. Last season, and I look at last season as Villa didn't really have him for the entirety of last season, because he did just break down every time he started to get back in. We never had the true version of Jacob Ramsey last season with injuries, so having him back will be massive this season.
There's a good friend of mine who messages me a lot. He sends me voice notes, often too long, which I can't always read, which I can't always listen to because I'm busy.
Struggle to read a voice note.
But he doesn't rate Ramsey.
Who is that?
Yeah,
he's just a friend. He's not anyone who works in football, surely.
He doesn't work in football, but he's very knowledgeable. He's a good friend of mine. But he's not totally convinced by Ramsey. He thinks that he's overrated, but I disagree with him. He gets a lot. He's very on the money with everything else, so it's quite surprising that he doesn't rate him.
Yeah, I've never heard anyone say that as a Villa fan. I think there's people who rate him, but I think they forget how good he is. I think he's absolutely wonderful footballer and coming through the academy the way he has, where really when he was younger, he wasn't really thought of as being going to go on and be anything special perhaps and play for the first team, but he's been absolutely brilliant for Villa. Obviously, we talked about injuries. Bailey broke down. I hope we don't have a season. We've had a few seasons like that with Leon Bailey where he breaks down. Him going off was a blow, and Onana's ended up going off as well. Although fair play to him, he really tried to run it off and stay on the pitch. But it was just that kind of game, wasn't it? Really, it was. People were going down every 2 seconds, yellow cards every 2 seconds. Referee was a bit overzealous with his whistle, in my opinion. Didn't really let the game flow. But that's, I suppose, a disappointing element to come out yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, he did have some problems last year, but he kind of played on with them, didn't he? So feels like he's almost that type of player that you just have to manage a little bit. Yeah, I hope he doesn't, because he had a great year last year and was really important for Villa.
Yeah, let's move on to the second half. I don't think there's anything else really key to pull from the first. It's a really hard game to kind of go through because it was so bitty and there wasn't loads happening. That's why it's such a great win. Just something I was running through in my head when I was watching yesterday. Just, a lot of players take the plaudits for Villa for obvious reasons, but I think technically, Pau Torres and Youri Tielemans, they're so wonderful to watch. They're both just brilliant footballers. Tielemans in tight spaces all of a sudden looks like he can manipulate the ball any way. Once he gets himself out of some really tight situations, Youri Tielemans, you mentioned it earlier. Some of these players, they're going to get better. Every good move that Villa construct starts with Pau Torres and has Tielemans in there somewhere.
Yeah, I love watching him. I'm really enjoying him. I did at the back end of last season, and I did it the second half of last season, and felt like Villa missed him badly in those final few games. I think he's got to be there now. I think even with even when Kamara's fit, I think he has to play.
Yeah, I'd struggle to pick an 11 without Tielemans. I mean, he's passed the acid test, Greg, because he's got a Tielemans shirt on the way. He's made it to being on the back of one of my shirts. So you've made it as a player at Villa when that happens, Greg.
Yeah,
what everyone's aiming for, really deep down.
Yeah, I don't think Michael Oakes massively justified that, but
No, because when I pick up the old shirts, they're very rarely numbered. So I like to go back and get some like niche. Well, I've got a Skameka shirt. Like I do things that are quite niche at times.
Okay, so you got to be either really good or just massively average.
Basically, that's the barometer that we've got. But Tielemans fits into the really good.
Yeah, no, he does. Look, on a serious note, he's getting better and better. The criticism of him when Leicester got relegated and he was in that team, because Leicester had a very talented team when you look at it, but they just weren't able to get all of them playing in the right way, I don't think. And yeah, the criticism of him was that he couldn't get up and down as well as he perhaps used to. Was a little bit lightweight at times, but we're seeing all of his qualities in a Villa shirt now. He's the issues perhaps that he had previously are not clear to see because the players around him are doing some of that dirty work for him, or maybe that's not the right way to put it.
He's doing a lot of dirty
sorry,
work.
that's not the right way to put it. I've not articulated that in the way that I wanted to. I feel, look, there were questions. Let's simplify it. There were question marks over him when he came. Villa paid him a very, very handsome salary. Blew everybody else out of the water. Previously there were clubs like Arsenal and Liverpool who were looking at him, but didn't really fancy him this time around. So let's make it very simple. There were question marks when he came. There aren't any now. He's looking very, very good. He looks the part, and I really enjoy watching him.
At the end of the day, I think back to when Leicester were a really, really high level Premier League side, finishing top 5. Obviously, they won the league a few years before, but they're finishing top 5, top 6. I think they finished 5th 2 years in a row. Won the FA Cup where he scored a winner.
Yeah.
When he was in a good team, that was the brilliant version of Tielemans. Leicester then lost their way a bit it's very easy, however good you are, if a team loses their way, it's very easy to get caught up in that. And I think that's what's happened with Tielemans, because you've put him in another good team. And again, he looks brilliant, Greg.
Yeah, perhaps similar with Everton. Onana wasn't looking
Dan
that
Bowden
good,
just said similar here in the chat.
Right, there we go, Dan. Great minds, eh? Dan Bowden, I mean, not you, Dan.
I knew you weren't talking about me, Greg.
So I think you're right. Yeah, the setup's there for him. He's working under a brilliant manager, and they're getting the best out of him. So I'll go back to something that Tyrone Mings said at the very, very start of Unai Emery's time at Villa. He just said that the coaching staff made everything so simple for the team because they simplified every individual position. And Mings said, if everybody does exactly what we're asked to do, the collective will just work naturally because we're all doing our jobs. And that's all they're having to do. Individual roles, mastering them. And so far, Tielemans is doing that.
Yeah, he didn't get a terrible reception from Leicester fans. I thought he might get booed, but then you do think, well,
how can you boo?
This guy scored the winner in an FA Cup final for you, so how can you
you
can't boo him anyway. Yeah, he didn't get a bad
him?
reception at all. But I think maybe they'd have been pleasantly surprised. Well, not pleasantly surprised, obviously, because they would have wanted to have a bad game. So maybe they'd have been surprised by what they saw, because he was written off. But by Leicester fans, they weren't really concerned when they lost him. They just thought he'd gone, basically. But yeah, he's honestly such a technically brilliant footballer. I just absolutely love watching Youri Tielemans. Let's talk about John Duran then. Scored the winner for the second consecutive away game. May have even been his first touch, in all honesty. I don't remember him touching the ball much before then. Brilliant delivery from Luca Dean, and it is a brilliant header, isn't it, Craig?
Yeah. And someone in the comments earlier on put, would Ollie Watkins would have scored? Would Ollie have scored that header?
Richard Edwards.
Probably don't think he would have, but Ollie does other things well.
He scored a good header like that against Bournemouth. Someone else said that in the comments.
Good point. But would you have backed Watkins to score that goal ahead of Duran? Probably not. I think fantastic goal. Clearly having a massive impact in games now when he's coming on, which is great for Villa. They're getting strength, that strength in depth up front. Goes back to the question: does he deserve a start? Yeah, I just think a couple more games. If Watkins doesn't score, and Duran continues to do what he does, then he does. Yeah, you can't keep a striker who keeps scoring on the bench for too much longer.
You say that, but if something's working, which that is working, bringing him on at the moment.
No, you just can't do it. It's not fair for the striker. Look, I'm all for keeping a winning team together, and if it's working, it's working. But if your striker keeps scoring, you've got to start him at some point. I just don't think it's the time yet.
Because he stayed, he obviously hasn't gone in this transfer window, and he looks, his body language, he looks a bit happier, a bit more at ease than he has done previously. I've definitely forgiven him for his West Ham thing. He did get he did get a fine for that. So obviously the club thought he'd done wrong as well. But he scored 2 winners, so I can let that lie. John Duran, that's not a problem at all. But what I think he's doing at the moment is, he'd come in when Villa had injuries last season or Watkins was rotated out. I think what they can do now at the moment is, it might be that even if Watkins is fit and doing well, that for games here and there in the Premier League, when they've got Champions League coming up, that Duran can start. And I think that's a push on from last season for him.
Yeah, it is a push on. Look, you know he's probably going to start the Wigan game, don't you? The Wickham game.
I mean, I'll 100% start that.
It's not what he wants. He doesn't want to be starting against the real low-ranked teams that Villa play, but he's going to be starting more games. He's going to feature more. He's coming on at 60 minutes now. If Watkins isn't doing it, he's on at 60 minutes, absolutely no doubt. Whereas last year, I don't know the exact figures, but he was coming on a lot later, wasn't he? So, Watkins knows he's breathing down his neck now as well. So the pressure's on Watkins in some ways. But yeah, look, there's lots more games for Villa. They want to go further in the League Cup. They want to go further in the FA Cup. So they're going to be lots of high-profile games that Villa will have. And having 2 strikers to turn to who are, equally good at different things, then it's great.
It does look like a few players have been mentioned and alluded to in the chat a little bit. We heard John McGinn talk about John Duran last season. I'm sure he tried to get his arm around him at times last season as captain. He saw Pau Torres at the end of the game with his arm around him, trying to talk to him, trying to G him up. We could see in training pictures and videos, and saw it a little bit yesterday as well. It does seem like Onana's getting into him a bit, which might be helpful because it's a player who's closer to his age, a player who maybe knows a little bit about kind of experiences that he's had in coming from a different country at a young age. Onana seems to have been a good influence on Duran, and he just seems generally to be a good influence around the place, actually.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for a little bit more. It's a small sample size with Onana because I'd heard some pretty yeah, okay, but I'll maybe hold back on saying that, but I'd heard I had some mixed messages from people at Everton. Let's just say Sean Dyche, wasn't really fancying him too much towards the end, and was kind of. It was okay with him leaving, but I'll try and get a bit more information on that before I go.
Does that come down to environment again, though? Because Everton's just not a stable environment. If you put someone in a better environment, you're going to get a better version of them. That's just
it could be. And I mean, if you look back to when Onana first went to Everton, I mean, West Ham were massively in for him. He had two options to go to either West Ham, but the reason he went to Everton was because he wanted a guarantee of games to then go so he could play in the international tournaments for Belgium. I think there was either a Euros or a World Cup coming up in the very close to when he signed, and he played a lot of games and got into that squad, so he wasn't going to get that at West Ham. But yeah, look, Everton must be a pretty awful place to be at the moment for players.
Yesterday.
You've seen supporters sort of hanging outside stadiums and train stations, giving players abuse. For their performances. Shades of Villa, wasn't it? When they were getting relegated.
Everton and Villa, aren't they?
Very, 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 very similar. That 3-2 game yesterday was just something else, and it was worse, but it reminded me of the Villa Leicester game a couple of years under Sherwood as well.
2-0 at 87 minutes yesterday.
Yeah, there's no excuse for that. And if you just look at, I mean, I haven't seen the highlights or anything. But
I have. It could have been more.
I've heard that there was a real onslaught from Bournemouth at the end, which just isn't right. You just got to get rid. You just got to maintain the game. There's one occasion that Villa have done that in the last couple of years, and that was against Arsenal when. But do you remember early into Emery's time, Villa couldn't handle it. I think they were what was the score? They 1-0 up. No,
Emery at Villa or Emery at Arsenal?
It was at Villa Park. Was it 0-0? Villa 0, Arsenal 0, and then they lost 2-0 when Martinez went up for a corner.
4-2. We lost in the end.
4-2. God, yeah, Jesus. What was the score? How did the scoring go? Because were they leading? Villa,
we went 1-0 up. Watkins ran Saliba and scored early with his left foot.
It was 2-2 with 10 minutes to go, wasn't it?
Scored quickly. I think Arsenal went 2-1 up potentially. Oh no, we went 2-1 up. Scored a lovely goal with Coutinho. Brilliant move from front to back, which is when fans started to get on board with what Emery was doing with the playing out from the back. And then I think they got back to 2-2.
Yeah, so look, it's not a good comparison, but the only game that I can draw on in any way to compare it to that was that game, because Emery was absolutely furious, and I remember writing a analysis piece for The Athletic after that game, and I analysed the last 10 minutes specifically. So it was 80 minutes up until when full time was, which maybe 95. And Villa were just awful. They could not keep the ball. They just kept hoofing it long. Konza long, Martinez long, Mings I think played long. They just could not hold the ball. And it sounded like that's what happened at Everton yesterday. They just lost their heads. And yeah, going off on a bit of a tangent, but it was something else. I haven't seen a result like that for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to compare it to certain games, and then people in the chat picked the perfect game to compare it to. Villa were 2-0 up against Wolves at home with 10 minutes left. God,
of course, yeah.
That was a vile day. Yeah, that was a vile day, losing 3-2 to Wolves.
Yeah, I can't imagine there's been many times like the Everton game yesterday where teams 2-0 up with such a short amount of time left. I mean, Wolves was 82, was it?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah, just imagine the feeling of being in the home end when that happens to you is absolutely vile. Like, there's no worse feeling from being a football fan when something like that happens. A game just completely turns on its head. But then on the flip side, God, imagine being in the away end. Must have been absolutely unbelievable in that Bournemouth away end yesterday. So football can give you the best feeling in the world. It can drive you absolutely mad as well. But back to John Duran. It's just a brilliant header, isn't it?
Brilliant header. Yeah, brilliant header, and look, deserves to be deserves to take his plaudits because it was great goal. The issue with him is that he can't really speak very good English, so not many of the English speaking lads can get that close to him because they can't have proper conversations.
Onana
with
speaks
him.
every language in the book. Doesn't it?
I know, so he's a good one, but yeah, look, he needs good people around him. He needs the support. He needs the belief from Villa that they're gonna give him the regular minutes that he wants, and hopefully he'll kick on and be a really important player.
Heard murmurs that he's moved out of the city centre to a quieter location. I'd need to get that completely firmed up because I don't know how true that is, but I have heard that, but I don't know how true it is. So that would be an interesting one if he has moved away from the city centre, because that would probably be a good thing for him. One maybe slight concern, other than the injuries from the game yesterday, is that, I mean, Villa saw out the game, and 9 times out of 10 under Emery, if they're 1 goal ahead going into the last 10 minutes, Villa have seen the games out. Like, it hasn't been a problem like it has done under previous regimes, but they just seem a general reluctance to keep a clean sheet, Greg, for Villa.
Yeah, I mean, if we're really picking a criticism, then that's it, isn't it? You'd like to see a bit more solidity in the defence, but a win's a win, isn't it?
Yeah.
Win 2-1 or 3-2 every week. Who cares?
Matthew Arras trying to get at us a little bit. Nana can't speak Spanish. He's spoke about that he is learning Spanish, and he's asked Emery to speak to him in Spanish because he's learning. So he's got a grip on the language. Matthew Arras. He's got a grip on the.
So he can help. He can help Duran speak Spanish and.
You mean English?
Speak English, and Duran can help him speak Spanish.
There we go. It's the perfect friendship, Greg. Much like mine and yours friendship, just the perfect one. Right then, I know Champions League. Greg wants to talk about
one very quick.
Oh, know who we are.
People who are interested because it was a big day for Lamar Bogard.
How was I going to skate over that? That's poor from me.
Yeah, I mean, look, he was for a bit of background. He was a player that Villa signed just before the Brexit rules changed, where you couldn't bring in players from other countries in Europe because of Brexit. So Villa signed Sil Swinkels and Lamar Bogard at the same time from clubs in Holland. They saw the potential in them, good scouting from. Oh God, I forgot his name, but it'll come back to me. It'll come back to me. I think he's still at the club. And look, it's been a long wait for Bogard, I think, to come and play. I think he's felt like it at times. He's been ready, but it's always going to be very difficult to come into the Premier League and play. He's had a couple of loan spells. Norwich and West Brom were both interested in taking him in the last couple of windows. Villa decided to keep him, gave him a new deal, which has and now he's got his big break yesterday and did okay, didn't he? Look, okay, the goal wasn't great, but I think he was just a bit nervous putting in another challenge and getting the yellow card again. So a good day for him, a good day for Villa's academy. It shows that if Villa do bring players in from abroad or from lower league clubs at a young age, that they can get their chance if they're good enough. So that'll be another good one for the academy.
What do you think the reasoning was for him playing over Nedeljkovic yesterday, Greg? You got any?
Yeah, been impressing in training. Yeah, so okay. I think Nedeljkovic had a few issues in terms of just. Look, Bogard's been around training a lot longer than Nedeljkovic, for example.
He's also played football in England.
Yeah, but he knows exactly. He knows the systems and the setups. He hasn't played many games at right back.
No, they've been working on that in the week, haven't they?
But they have been working on that. So he was somebody that appealed to Emery and thought that he's worked hard and he deserves a chance. And look, he's a little bit older than Nedeljkovic as well, as mad as that sounds. So just a bit more experience, maybe.
Yeah, just a quick one. A good pickup in the chat here from Richard Edwards. Barkley coming on at the end. I feel Barkley settled Villa down a little bit. Suddenly we started to pass the ball a little bit better when Barkley was on the pitch, which is a positive, Greg. Yeah,
great option to have, isn't he? Barkley will be wanting to play more games, and I'm sure he'll get more minutes in the times ahead. But Emery was a massive fan of him. Trying to get him in, he spoke so highly of him during the summer when he was trying to sign him. So we know that he's gonna play because he's a player that the manager likes a lot.
Yeah, really good to see him come on and do well. Made some lovely passes He did, Ross Barkley. Right, let's talk about the Champions League. Obviously, Jacob and I did a live whilst the draw was going on. A lot of misinformation spread because it took us a while to get up to speed with how the draw was working, in all honesty. But overall, what have you made of those fixtures, Greg? I think it's, especially when you look at the order of it now, because the order was revealed yesterday, it's a nice balance of having big teams, but also you think we've got a chance of progressing there.
Yeah, lots of feelings around it. Fun, exciting. I think it's very, very doable as well. I feel like Villa can get off to a good start away at Young Boys. Will we be going to the Wankdorf Stadium, Dan?
I'm going to be looking into everything, Greg. All options are on the table at the moment. All options are open. I've got to get myself to a Champions League away game. This might not ever happen again. So
even if you just go as well, if you don't go to the game,
no, if I'm going to the game.
I know you want.
I'm not one of those people. I'd hate to not be in the game. I
couldn't.
Couldn't
You not do it?
Nah, I couldn't do that. I don't know whether that's weird, but I could not do that. I'd want.
I mean, it'd be difficult. Obviously, of course, it'd be difficult to go somewhere and not go to the game. But I think I think it's good. It's a good week. It's a good week. Couple of days out, isn't it? Anyway, but yeah, look.
All the away games are 5:45, aren't they? I've noticed, and all the home 8 o'clock. Is that right?
I think I don't know. I'll have to double check.
In the main, anyway. That's the pattern.
Yeah. So, yeah, a good opening game for Villa because it's one that I think that they can go and win and get off to a good start. And that's what ultimately that's what you want. You want to win the games. It doesn't matter what the experience is like. Yeah, it's great fun. And a massive lift for the club. But Villa want to go and win now, so I think they can get off to a good start. The Bayern Munich game at home will be fantastic. That night at Villa Park will be something really, really special. Something that anyone who's inside will remember. I look back to Newcastle last year, and they had those really big fixtures against PSG and Milan, and who's the other one?
Paris.
PSG, Milan, and there was one more, wasn't there? Dortmund, yeah. So Villa got a nice mix of very big games. Douglas Luiz coming back to Villa Park with Juventus.
I knew that was going to happen. I called that. I called a few things. I called Celtic as well in that draw.
Celtic, a certain Tommy Jordan will be very, very excited for that one.
Come on, Villa.
The two clubs that are very close to his heart. And yeah. I mean, look, I look through the fixtures and I almost think this sounds a bit crazy, but I can't see Villa losing any of them.
Wow, that's where me and Jacob went quite big. We said that I said we'd beat. But you just had Gabriel Bonner said that on TalkSport. Did you know that?
No, but I mean, I know that sounds crazy. And look, of course they're going to drop points at some point and probably lose at some stage. And look, what we've got to remember is the Europa Conference.
For the Champions League.
That's right. Imagine it, 8 out of 8 wins, top of the league. No, I just look at the fixtures and I'm just confident now with Villa more often than I'm not. And look, we know they're going to drop points at some point, but
you've just said they're going to go and beat it. I suppose that's still dropping points,
yeah. I look at the fixtures and I just fancy Villa so often now every time they play. Those away games look pretty straightforward. Can I say that?
You can't say that in the Champions League. We went to places and struggled last year with the Conference League. These teams have been in Europe for a long time.
Yeah. That's what you got to remember. I mean, I've got to think back to the Olympiacos games. Forgetting the fixtures now. Villa were actually very bad away from home last year.
Yeah, I think they only won.
Lille was the. Yeah, they were very bad. So that's another area that they do definitely need to improve on. But I do think having those few experiences last year in the Conference League will help. It'll help some of the players that never played in Europe before, and just the whole scheduling as well. The sort of Tuesday to Saturday, Tuesday to Sunday, Thursday to Sunday, however it might work. Mostly Tuesdays and Wednesdays, aren't they this time?
Yeah. I think it's all Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Yeah,
the first week for some reason there's some games on Thursday just in the first round of fixtures. I don't know why that is, but there is some on Thursdays. But we're Tuesday. Actually kick off our Champions League campaign on my birthday.
Nice. Is that your 41st or
39th, Greg? Nearly at 40. You can't be in your 40s when you come into podcast wearing caps, Greg. You can't. I'll stop wearing caps when I'm 40. I think on podcasts. I think that's the cut off, isn't it? For
you stop putting your makeup on as well, or
mate, In all honesty, the makeup from Friday at Sky is probably still knocking around somewhere. I always forget to take it off before I go to bed. Obviously I've showered since then, but I do always forget to take the makeup off. I think it's good that we've got Bayern first home game. I think it's good to have the hardest team first because I think Villa Park that night is just going to be something else. I know that will be the best atmosphere I've ever experienced.
It would have been anyway, though, wouldn't it? That's the thing.
No, but to have it first makes it even better.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be a massive night regardless, and I think it's good to play the best teams. It's good, and I fancy Villa against when I look down those fixtures, I fancy Villa to have to compete for sure against all of them, but to win more than they're going to drop points. I feel like Villa. I've gone big here, and I've gone too big.
That's good. People are enjoying it in the chat as well. I feel like Villa will beat Bayern and Juve at home, and then you lose to Young Boys and Bruges away. That feels quite Villa.
Might not be the worst thing.
No, you've got to get. I predicted 14 points. I think the other night when I went through the games, I did have us to lose 1 or 2. I can't remember which one. But I think
surely 5. I mean, that'll do it, wouldn't it? Surely 5 wins. 15 would do it, would it? 5 wins out of 8.
I think the way it works, if you finish 24th, I reckon you'd only need 10 to 12 points to finish 24th and get yourself into the playoffs to get into the last 16 to have a 2-legged tie. Villa would do that in my mind. God, I don't want to be saying finishing 30 to 32 out of 32, 3 points. I don't know. Nah, Villa will quite. I'm confident Villa will get to the last 16. I really, really am. I think that draw's decent. I think there's some mouth-watering ties in there as well. But I'm not looking at any game there and thinking that's not winnable. Villa beat Manchester City and Arsenal last season in the same week.
Exactly.
Villa can play. Villa proved they can play against elite opposition. So you've started spreading vicious rumours here now, Greg. People saying, I'm more worried why you're wearing makeup. Now, I don't generally wear makeup, but when you're on TV, you have makeup because of things like shine and things like bag under your eyes from getting up at 3 a.m. You do. There's makeup people there that you will have to wear.
Enough makeup talk. Tom mentions in the chat they've got Musiala scary. Now you've compared Musiala to Ramsey, haven't you?
Yeah, we'll see.
Who do you think's the best out of the two?
We'll see in October or September, whenever the game is, Greg. Won't we? We'll see. The proof will be in the pudding of that game. You'll see. Everyone laughs at some of the things I say. Every now and again, something I say comes true. So yeah,
like Arsenal struggling.
When they were struggling when we used to say that. I was not alone when I was saying that. You were definitely involved.
I wasn't involved. Oh, don't bring me into it. This was you.
They did finish 8th.
Solely you.
They finished 8th around that time.
It wasn't that time.
When are you talking?
The season before, 2 seasons ago, you were saying Villa are going to finish above Arsenal.
Arsenal finished 5th. It wasn't a terrible shout.
This was when Steven Gerrard was in charge, by the way.
I think it was around the time we were trying to nick Smith Rowe, wasn't it? I can't remember. I think they finished 5th that season, Arsenal. I did think Villa were on the up then. I really did, and it was obviously naive of me. But I've got lots of things right as well. We all get things right. We all get things right.
We do.
It's just the nature of the game, isn't it? It's the nature of the game. And the trouble for us is when we have an opinion, it's not just like you're down the pub and a couple of your mates hear your bad opinion, or it's in a WhatsApp group. A lot of people listen to what you say, and people remember what you say as well. I've got something I said about Wolves last season on Sky Sports News, and every time they win a game, this video comes back.
What was it?
I said there'd been a relegation battle last season. And everyone said, "Oh,
don't think that was the worst prediction."
Mate, I spoke to Tim Spears before I went on Sky and did that, and he completely agreed with everything I'd said. The Wolves fans are reinventing history. Suddenly they were like, "No, we were never going to struggle." But I think when Gary O'Neill came in and Lopetegui had walked out, I think most people would have said,
"Yeah,
they're going to be in a relegation." But it's not like they finished 6th in the league either. They finished 14th, so a million miles away. But yeah, every time they won a game last season, that video came back out, and I was getting absolutely panned.
That could be maybe this Champions League. Let's hope it's not maybe the Champions League.
Yeah, Villa don't win a game. Greg said that they're going to win every one. Yeah.
Very quick one. 30 seconds before we go. What do you make of Birmingham at the moment? A serious question.
This is what I'm glad you've said that, because I actually wanted to, fair play to them, they're doing really well. I wanted to bring this up when we were talking about Villa not being able to spend money. Birmingham in League One have just been allowed to spend £15 million on a striker. How does that work? I know League One is a hard reset, but surely
it's a different.
If that's allowed to happen, then the rules are completely wrong with what we're dealing with, because that isn't allowing us to grow. But you're in League One, you're allowed to grow and do what you like.
it is a different set of rules. It's based on 60% of your revenue. So the rules are slightly different, but I'll go into a bit more detail at some point when I get the chance to write about Birmingham and explain it all. But, it'll be similar to sort of Chelsea in some ways, by the way. They're staggering deals over long-term contracts, paying money later down the line, etc. So, they got to remember, look, they did sell Jordan James for £4 million. They might have got all that money in advance. We have to find out these finer details, but it's very much a case where they can be staggered over years, I think. But look, there's absolutely no denying that they've spent a serious amount of money, to absolutely blow the transfer record in League One out by 5 times or whatever it is.
Yeah, it was. I think the record was $3.5 million before.
3.5 million. They spent up to 15 million on Stansford. So
that's mad, isn't it? That is.
It's an interesting one, though, isn't it? It's interesting to see how just Birmingham City aside, who obviously you're big rivals, but a team that are very, very ambitious, and we haven't seen this in League One for a while, have we? So it's quite an interesting case study in some ways.
Yeah, apologies for Greg's language on the show, saying Birmingham City on a Villa podcast. I do need to apologise for that, and we are going to have to fine him a week's wages as well for bringing that up.
If only I got paid.
If only, Greg. Right then, before we go, we've got to hear from our sponsors, NordVPN. Is proudly sponsored by NordVPN, so when you can't watch it, we want to help you. NordVPN is a secure and private service which works on pretty much any device, including your laptop, mobile, and television. So if you want to watch some live content, it allows you to appear like you're in another country. And whilst you're connected, no one else can find out what you're doing, including your internet service provider. Beyond this, the service also has threat protection baked in to protect you from intrusive website ads and malware, which is pretty handy for you. As part of NordVPN support performance for free, this also includes Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. All you've got to do is go to 1874.io/NordVPN and sign up. All the details are also in the description. As always, we're very grateful to anyone that signs up. We know that money is tight, but if you think NordVPN will help you out, it will also help keep the channel running and help us too. Yep, helped me watch Leicester against Villa yesterday afternoon. Right then, Greg, been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. We've gone long there on the old live, 1,261 people watching at the moment as well. I've got to admit I prefer live, and it does make life easy for the producer as well when we do it live, Greg.
Yeah, fine by me. Equally to me. I'm always
I suppose on a week.
anyway.
This is a Sunday anyway. We usually obviously do it on a Monday, but schedules have aligned for a change, and we've been able to do it on a Sunday. It's obviously worked well for a lot of people, tucking into their shredded wheat and watching 1874, all their cheese beans
and cheese and toast. Yeah.
I've got a question about your fruit bowl behind you before we depart, Greg.
Oh yeah.
Tomato in your fruit bowl?
No, that's bananas, oranges, and a box of Haribo.
Oh, a box of Haribo in the fruit bowl. Big fan of that, Greg. But yeah, it looks like a tomato behind the banana from here. I did one. Tomato technically is a fruit, so I don't think you could be.
No, that's a Haribo Super Mix logo.
I can't even see that.
At least bit here.
I know, I can't see that.
Okay, that's an orange behind.
You should be able to see what I can see because it's.
That's an orange behind the banana.
Okay. Yeah, no tomatoes in Greg's fruit bowl. We can confirm, and we can confirm once again. Cheese and
other sweet manufacturers are available.
Maui. I can't think of any other sweets. Or Mawau, is it? I don't know what it is. Anyway, let's just go. Right. Thank you so much for joining us this Sunday morning. Thank you to Lee for producing. Thanks to Greg for joining me as always. And thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring. Do read the link in the description and see how they can help you out. Right then, I'll be back. Well, it's international break, but I'm sure there'll be some content through the week. So yeah, I'll make sure I jump on at some point through the week. Transfer window's over now, so I'm far less busy than I was at home, or so I'll be able to jump on more content before Greg says it. No more holidays either. So yeah, I'll be here to do some shows. Thank you ever so much to the 1,261 that are live with us across various platforms at the moment. Whichever platform you're on, if you can do the things that I bang on about every single week, liking on YouTube, subscribing with your post notifications on, and commenting as well with whether you agree with what Greg and myself are saying. And if you're listening on an audio platform, give us a really nice review. Leave us a nice review and say some nice words about us. And all this stuff basically helps us appear in places that we may not normally appear and helps the channel grow. I'm aware there's a million other Villa podcast out there. So thank you for sticking with us and listening to what we have to say. Right then, have a good rest of your Sunday. Enjoy your Sunday roast or your cheese, egg on beans, on toast, whatever it was Greg had. And yeah, as always, up the Villa, Greg.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Richard.